Now, cops tell us a pair of officers stopped a vehicle which had two men inside because it was parked illegally at a bus stop. When officers asked the suspects, who police say is a 34-year-old Guy Rivera accused of the shooting, and 41-year-old Lindy Jones to step out of the car, the suspect in the passenger seat refused, pointed a gun at the officers, striking Diller in the torso just below a bullet-resistant vest, while the officer's partner returned fire, striking the suspect in the back, and Diller was taken to the hospital but could not be saved.
It's such a tragedy, and it's hard to hear that this young officer losing his life at the hands of a criminal who has been leading a life of crime. Jonathan Diller, a 1-year-old child and a wife that he leaves behind. And he wore the badge and he gave his life behind that badge. And it's yet another tragedy, a story that we see all too often and doesn't get the airtime that it deserves, which is why we're doing that here today on the Annie Frey Show. Lieutenant Joe Gamaldi joins us now. He is the Fraternal Order of Police National Vice President. Lieutenant, thank you for being with us here today to talk about Jonathan here, but also to give us a little bit of a broader picture of what's happening right now in the United States of America.
Yeah, well, obviously, my thoughts and prayers are with Officer Diller's family, his friends, the NYPD. I can't imagine and explain the grief to y'all of what everybody is experiencing right now. But the worst part about this horrific tragedy is that it was completely avoidable. This dirtbag who gunned down this officer in cold blood had been arrested 21 times. I didn't misspeak. 21. And he's in his early 30s, so he's averaging a couple arrests per year since he's been an adult. He never should have been free in the first place to murder this officer. But this officer's death is just a stark reminder of the war on cops in this country that is raging, that no one seems to want to talk about, Annie. We had 378 police officers shot last year. That is a record since we started tracking the data back in 2015. It is a 60% increase in officers shot since 2018. And it just continues to roll on. This year, it's not getting any better. We're already outpacing those numbers by 7%. Ambush attacks are through the roof, over 115 last year. And when I talk about the war on cops, I don't want to just complain about the problem. I actually want to offer solutions. And here's a thought. Maybe we could stop this ridiculous failed social experiment of the revolving door criminal justice system, because 85% of cop killers have been arrested before. 71% of them are convicted felons. And I don't know, maybe the leader of our country, because I'm old school and think that the leader should set the tone, maybe Joe Biden could actually condemn the violence against law enforcement. But we haven't heard a peep from the White House. Not a word about this historic violence against law enforcement. Maybe House Republicans could get their butts in gear and pass the Protect and Serve Act, which would make it a federal crime to knowingly assault a police officer. And on a local level, police chiefs need to make sure that they're providing ambush training for officers so that we can be prepared for situations like this. And finally, how about we just stop treating cops like crap in this country?
Yeah. Amen. I mean, say it again and say it loud. We're sitting here in St. Louis, and we have had our fair share of concern with the mistreatment of police officers. They're incredibly important to the safety and security of the city, and the enforcement, the actual follow through of convicting criminals and making sure that everybody is very clear who the criminals are and who the victims are. The blurred lines everywhere have led us to this point, and it's a variety of fronts that police officers and their spouses and their children and their mothers and their fathers, they all know what it means for that individual to put on the uniform and the badge and to go out and go to work. There's a huge risk involved. Do you think this is is this a political problem that we have right now? Could this be solved by better policy, or do you think it's as cultural as it is political?
I think there's a number of factors. I think it's cultural. I think it's political, but I think there's also additional funding that could certainly help for police officers. But basically what has happened in this country is that politicians and grifters and some of those in the media realized they could make money and they could garner influence by treating police officers like scum in this country. And they just ran with it. And they didn't think of the collateral damage of what that would cause by reducing the legitimacy of police officers in their neighborhood, by constantly ramping up the anti-police rhetoric. And it basically gave criminals a free pass, like, yeah, go ahead and assault cops. And, it's not hyperbole when I say that we're going to work with targets on our backs every day. Just look at the NYPD. Last year, they had their highest ever recorded assaults on police officers in their history. I mean, what bigger wake up call do folks actually need to say that we need to prioritize? And just, I'll give you an example. If this were journalists who are being assaulted at this rate, or another one that was popular was they wanted to pass a law to protect poll workers. How many poll workers have been assaulted in the last year or shot dead? None. But no, when it's law enforcement, we don't even talk about it. President can't even make a statement about it. There needs to be a wholesale cultural change regarding how we treat police officers in this country, because it should not be socially acceptable to allow this violence. We're not some third world country where a cop should just be assassinated every single day and it doesn't raise an alarm. I mean, and just for perspective, there is a police officer shot in this country once every 23 hours. Let me say that again. Once every 23 hours, there is a cop shot in this country and nobody's talking about it.
Man, well, you certainly are. Lieutenant Joe Gamaldi with us. You are an officer at the Houston Police Department. And you are also the Fraternal Order of Police National Vice President. And we're grateful that you gave us some time here on this show today. What do you, I talk to people in our community here in St. Louis. I live in Illinois, so I know a lot of what is being invested in and not invested in. I know in Chicago, it's not the criminals they want to go after. It's the car manufacturers who make their cars too simple to break into. We live in the upside down. What can an everyday listener to the show right now do to support what you're talking about, to support the families of those who do put that uniform every day on and go out into the field to protect and serve?
You know, I would tell your listeners, I know everybody is busy. I know you got to get the kids to soccer practice after school. You got to get them over to practice. You got to get dinner made. But you have to be involved. And that could be as simple as sending an email to your council member and make sure that you understand you don't want the police defunded in your neighborhood, that you want safe streets. Make sure they hear from you. I know you can't go down to council and wait 3 hours and yell and scream like all these activists who don't have a job and don't do anything for a living. I know you can't do that, but you can do that. You can send an email. You can make a phone call. Make sure you're involved. And when these elections come around, do your research and make sure that you vote accordingly. And I know the whole room, all the oxygen is going to be sucked out of the room for a national election coming up. But focus on those local races, because that is going to be the biggest impact on your community. We're talking school board, we're talking DAs, we're talking city council or county executive, whatever your structure is of government there. If those people are not standing on a bedrock platform of law and order, vote their asses out. Because that is what starts everything for a prosperity of a community, to make sure that we have businesses that feel safe and can operate there, to make sure that our schools safe. It all starts with public safety. So folks, please invest that time. And if you see a police officer out on the street, just say thank you. You have no idea what that means to us. You will make our day. So just say thank you. Give us a smile. It would be greatly appreciated. And for those of you who are supporting us, thank you so much. You have no idea what it means to us.
We're speaking with Lieutenant Joe Gamaldi, and I encourage you to follow him on X at Joe Gamaldi. You can go to FOP.net as well. Have you sensed at all that there is an urgency with society right now? We went into 2020 was a very, very hard year for police officers, for their families, the people who love those in uniform. We're 4 years departed from that almost now. Is the pendulum swinging back? Can you sense that society is like, that was not the right way for us to handle the situation with our police and our communities?
Yes, I've certainly saw the pendulum swing back. And obviously the overwhelming majority of Americans are supporting police officers, but we still have these complete Looney Tunes on the far left that, as your point, want to hold car companies responsible for people that are constantly stealing cars. I mean, or we still have city councils that do not treat their officers with any kind of respect and don't want to fund them properly. I mean, just look at Baltimore back in 2020. They defunded their police department. You know what unit got cut? The Marine unit. You think maybe it would have been a good idea to have some boats on the water the other night when that tragedy happened? So I think people just need to understand that, yes, the pendulum has shifted, but we are getting constant attacks from those on the far left that still want to defund police departments and that still want to prosecute officers when they're doing their job the right way. I mean, if a police officer colors outside the lines, they should be held accountable. But you know what? If we're following policy, training, and the law, we should be supported not only by the community, not only by elected officials, but by our own police chiefs who shouldn't be throwing police officers under the bus when they're doing the job the right way.
Amen. Lieutenant Joe Gamaldi, thank you for your time today and that direction as well on how people can get involved, because we often look at elections and push things off until the next cycle gets here and hope that the right person gets in there and makes a difference. But certainly listening to you, Lieutenant, there are things that we can individually do to strengthen our own communities, and it's imperative that we do step up and do so.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much.